What's going on, everyone? Today is a special day because this means that the NBA playoffs start tomorrow. It's an exciting time. The bubble was a fantastic success. The NBA absolutely killed it. I do think there was a little bit of flaws with the play-in and how that all worked out with, the Suns going 8-0 and not even getting in the play-in. I think there could be some tweaks to that, but all in all, it was a major success, and it's looking to continue to be that way with testing going fantastic. So today I'm going to be giving you my personal NBA playoff predictions. We got a lot of good matchups, and I think this could be one of the best postseasons we've seen in a while. So let's just start it off with a really good one that the Lakers are just pissed that's happening. It's going to be the Lakers and Trailblazers as the 1 versus 8 seed in the Western Conference. And this is nuts. Portland, when they're fully healthy and have Trevor Ariza, Rodney Hood, they're probably a 4, 5, 6 seed in the Western Conference. I mean, they've been riddled with injuries throughout the entire season. They didn't have Yusuf Nurkic, and they had to give meaningful minutes to Hassan Whiteside. They didn't have Zach Collins. They were without a wing for ever until they traded for Trevor Ariza, and Gary Trent actually stepped up. This team is special. Damian Lillard was the bubble MVP for a reason. He got hot, and it got him into the postseason. Now, the Lakers, since entering the bubble, have not been very good. Their offense has been I think they're dead last in offense in the bubble. Their defense hasn't been bad. It's been pretty solid, but they do not have Avery Bradley, and I have no idea who's going to guard Dame. That is a huge question mark. But if they need their offense to wake up, this Portland defense is exactly who you'd want to go up against. Now, would you rather face, the Grizzlies in the first round? Yes, because there's a lot more room for error against a team like that. But Portland, you're going to drop some games to Damian Lillard. But their defense is so terrible. I think they're over 120 defensive rating in the bubble. I'm going Lakers in 6. I think they're going to split the first 2 games. I think the Lakers will slowly get back into the groove of things and pull out this series. Anthony Davis is going to dominate. I think he's going to be the best player in this series. And then over into the East, we have Milwaukee and Orlando, and this is pretty easy. The Bucks are winning in 4. They also haven't been that great, but I think that's also a testament because they've just been sitting guys the entire bubble. But there are some concerns with them that I will get to later. This team is going to kill the Magic. The Magic are without Jonathan Isaac, which is their one really good option on Giannis. I don't think this is going to be as big of a massacre as the Pistons series was last year, but I think they're going to sweep. The Bucks are such a great team, and the Magic just don't have enough offensively to overcome their defense even. Now, moving over to the West, we have the Houston Rockets and Oklahoma City Thunder. This is going to be a great series. There's a lot of narratives with it. You have Chris Paul getting traded from Houston for Russell Westbrook, and now they're facing each other, and Russell Westbrook might not even see the first round for a couple games. We don't know what his timetable to return is. So I think OKC is going to jump out to a start. I think they're going to win at least one of the first 2 games. But do I think they pull it out if, Russ comes back early on? I don't. I anticipate he will return because this year for the Rockets is huge. They need to go all in this year because their window is quickly closing. But I'm going Houston in 7. I think OKC matches up with them pretty well. I think OKC will jump out to a start where they don't have to deal with Russell Westbrook, and that Houston offense isn't going to be as great because Russ draws so many people in with his gravity, and he's so vital to what they're doing now with their small ball lineups. But I don't think Ben McLemore or Austin Rivers can pick up what Russ left. So I think OKC will jump out. I think they could win the series for sure. But Houston as long as Russ comes back, they should be fine. And then back to Indiana, Miami. I'm going Miami in 4. I think it's going to be a sweep. Miami matches up excellently with the Pacers. The entire season, Bam Adebayo has just shut down Miles Turner. The Pacers often struggle with switch-heavy defenses, and Miami does that a ton. They have the shooters to completely riddle the Pacers defense down, and Jimmy Butler has shown that he can lock up TJ Warren. And I like this Heat team. I think they're going to stomp the Pacers. If you go Miami in 5, totally get it, but I just don't see the Pacers being able to overcome the Heat. On to Denver, Utah. This is also a very good series. I think this is going to rely a lot on how Rudy Gobert defends Jokic and how the pick and roll is going to go with those two, with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. But man, Denver also has been hit by injury. Will Barton and Gary Harris haven't played at all in the bubble, which is huge for them because they're giving minutes to guys like PJ Dozier. And now Michael Porter Jr. has stepped up a ton, and he's looked fantastic. But Utah, their thing is they want to be known as that defensive team with a serviceable offense. Well, this season, their defense dropped off. It's pretty average now, and their offense without Bogdanovich is going to struggle. And they've pulled out some nice wins, but I think this is going to be a good series, but I'm ultimately going to go Denver in 6. I just think Utah really can't keep up with them, and you saw that in the overtime game a couple days ago. I just think they can't stop Denver's offense. I really don't. Boston, Philadelphia. This one I really want to talk about because Boston they're in a bit of a situation here. You see, Boston has a ton of wing players that are playing excellently in the bubble. I mean, Gordon Hayward's efficient as ever. Jaylen Brown has looked great. Jason Tatum, besides that one game against the Bucks where he was awful, he has looked amazing. Philadelphia, throughout the season, they have just dominated Boston. I think Joel Embiid is going to single-handedly win Philadelphia some games here. Without Ben Simmons, this is going to be interesting because I think Ben Simmons, if this was a regular postseason matchup, this would be a lot closer. I think you could lean either way. Ben Simmons could lock up Jason Tatum. He's done it before. But I think without Ben Simmons, who's going to guard those wings, man? Matisse Thybulle, I guess. I mean, Josh Richardson's been fantastic defensively, but I just don't think he can keep up with Jason Tatum. Joel Embiid is going to be the major guy in this series because the Sixers don't really have good point guard play. And it's just going to be Joel Embiid and a ton of shooters. They're going to need Tobias to step up huge. And I don't know, man. I'm going to go probably Boston in 6. Clippers, Dallas. This one's pretty easy for me. It's the LA Clippers in 4. I love this Clippers team, and this is a nightmare matchup for Dallas. I think Dallas would have loved to have faced anyone other than the Clippers in the postseason, but the Clippers just match up with them beautifully. I mean, you saw it in their game in the bubble. Kawhi Leonard was just killing these guys, and man, I feel bad because if Dallas ended up facing Denver, that series would have been a lot better. But I just think the Clippers have everything to counter what Dallas does well. And then Toronto, Brooklyn. This one is also pretty simple. I'm going to go Toronto in 5. I don't think Toronto swept the series in a long time. I think I saw something that they've never swept a series before. And, history tends to repeat itself. But I love this Raptors team. They're fantastically coached. I think Brooklyn, maybe Karis LeVert will have one really good game, or Toronto just hasn't hit their stride yet in one of those games. Toronto in 5. They usually drop one early. It's what they tend to do. On to the semifinals. We have Lakers, Rockets. This is also a fantastic series. Now, I'm going to assume that Russell Westbrook is back by now. And now, if this is OKC, I think Lakers will dominate OKC. I think it'd be Lakers in 5 probably. But Houston is a different story. Houston matches up really well against the Lakers. I think they can capitalize on the Lakers' defensive struggles. And I think, Anthony Davis can kill the Rockets. That's for sure. But I think the Rockets can keep up with them offensively. There is a world in which the Rockets win this series, and I would not be shocked. But I'm going Lakers in probably 6. The Rockets are going to need good games out of a lot of people to win. And I think they could pull it out. I think they could. I don't know, man. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, you can't bet against them. Bucks, Heat. This one is very intriguing because I think Miami is a lethal matchup against the Bucks because they counteract a ton of things the Bucks hate defensively. Milwaukee runs this super tight drop system that works excellently, but Miami has the shooters to just punish them for that. They can hit from the mid-range, they can pull up from 3. Miami also has the defenders to stop Giannis. Jay Crowder, Andre Iguodala, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. They could really give Giannis a hard time. But do I think Miami sustaining a high-end three-point shooting series is possible? Especially with how many guys they rely on that are young, they have inexperience in the postseason. I don't know, man. I do think the Heat are going to give the Bucks a run for their money and make the Bucks really work for it. I do. But I think the Heat just don't have enough experience. I think the Bucks are the more savvy team overall. I do think it's in the realm of possibility that the Heat win this series. But I'm going Milwaukee in 6. I think Milwaukee's going to drop some games early, and they're going to be like, what the hell do we do? And they'll figure it out. They don't really have scoring outside of Jimmy, and Jimmy gets a lot of his scoring from just drawing free throws. I do think he could do some damage with that against the Bucks defense, but I'm going Milwaukee in 6. This could go to 7, and I wouldn't be surprised. And also saying, I think the Heat can win this series. I do think it's more so going to be a system of, will the Bucks overcome their own weaknesses? If that makes sense to you. Clippers, Nuggets. This is a good series, by the way. I think the Clippers are taking this because this Denver team, they're really good, but I think they're going to be humbled by this series. I'm going Clippers in 5. And the last of the semifinals matchups, we have Boston, Toronto. This is a very interesting series because Boston has a lot of options, but I think the Raptors as a unit are so well run. They're built beautifully as a team. What's going to make the difference in this series for the Raptors is how their bench capitalizes off Boston's bench, because Boston isn't crazy deep, but the Raptors are. Where I'm ultimately gonna pick is Boston's main weakness is they have no way of stopping guys like Joel Embiid or Giannis. Toronto really has no inside scoring. Like this dominant inside scorer. And Pascal has not looked that great since entering the bubble. And I think against higher end teams, he doesn't play that great this season specifically. And I do think Boston has a lot of great wing defenders to throw at Pascal. I think Marcus Smart's going to bully the hell out of Kyle Lowry. I'm going Boston in 6. I'm really high on this Toronto team, but when they're put in the half court, I'm really fearful of them. I'm really concerned for what they could go to in the half court setting. And if Boston manages to slow them down in transition, get them in the half court, I think Boston has them where they want them. And would you look at that? Lakers Clippers. If you guys watch this channel, you know I'm going Clippers. Clippers in 7. Reason being is I think LeBron is going to have a hell of a series. I don't think he's going to let down the Kawhi Leonard matchup. But the thing is, the Clippers are just a better team. They just are. They're deeper. They have better options outside of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. The Lakers just don't have that. You know what? No, I'm going in 6. I'm going in 6. I think this Clippers team is the real deal. Milwaukee, Boston. This is a similar case for the Miami series. But the difference is with Miami versus Boston is Milwaukee has Giannis. Boston has nothing to stop him. I mean, Marcus Smart and Jason Tatum, they can try, but they're not enough. Daniel Tice, not enough. And S. Cantor, certainly not enough. But Boston has players that can really hurt Milwaukee. I think they can punish them from 3 and from those mid-rangers that Milwaukee gives up. The main thing that I think Milwaukee has to overcome in this entire postseason is themselves, essentially. They have their own weaknesses that can be capitalized on. They struggle against smaller teams. I do think it's a realistic possibility that Miami wins the series against them. But I do think having the best player on the court is a major factor in this series. You saw Toronto last year slow down Giannis because they had Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, Kawhi Leonard, all these fantastic defenders to slow him down. Boston really just doesn't have that. They have no one on the interior that can help wall off Giannis. And what they're going to be hoping for is, can anyone outside of Milwaukee beat us? Can we take advantage of their weaknesses over a full series? I'm going to go Milwaukee in 7. I think this series is going to be a dogfight, but I ultimately think having the best player is a world of difference. I think Milwaukee's deeper. Chris Middleton is known to be a Celtic killer, so I think he's in for a good series. It's just, can Milwaukee adjust? Can they do the right things to avoid their weaknesses? And I saw a lot of progress in that in the bubble. They learned a lot from that Raptors series last year. They can't let that happen again. So we have Bucks Clippers. This is a good series. The thing is, I've talked about how I don't think Boston has the guys to stop them, but I do think they have the guys to punish them. The Clippers have both. They have Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. Those guys can really give Giannis a problem at the point of attack. And Zubac isn't a bum. He could really, I don't think he's the Giannis stopper per se, but I think if Kawhi and Paul George can hurt Giannis on the way down, Zubac as the last line of defense is formidable. LA has the options to punish Milwaukee offensively. They have a ton of shooters. They have Kawhi Leonard, who has burned Milwaukee before. I think Paul George can do the same. The thing is, I also think Milwaukee can punish the Clippers. And I do think if the Clippers go small, the Bucks can really punish them. This series is going to be really good if it does happen. And I think it's going to be a really back and forth series. I do think the Clippers will take it in 6. And that's that.